Butch is on the air. Well, the record light's on anyway. Hi, boys and girls. It's me, Butch. My name is Terry David Silvercloud. I'll be 74 years old in just under 3 weeks. So I'm an old fart. Just checking my screen down here, make sure everything's running. So today did I tell you the date? Today is the 6th of October 2018. It's a Saturday. Sunny day. We get lots of rain. I live in Vancouver, British Columbia. I'm a reclusive artist and photographer, and my passion is things like theoretical physics, and I have a strong interest in history. Skipped a lot of those things when I was young. I was too lazy. But in my old age, I'm seriously into physics, and to keep myself busy and useful in my old age, I paint. So I'm yakking on and on. I'm up to a minute already. So today, because winter's coming on, I want to make a few more videos before I croak and try and educate some of the masses out there, you folk. I thought I'd talk about one of my favorite pet peeves, how the Roman Catholic Church created Lucifer, Satan, and the devil. And I'll talk a bit about hell too, but they didn't actually create hell. They made good use of it. So, where did this all start? The year was 385 in Rome. Rome was falling apart. The empire was no longer headquartered there. It had moved to Constantinople. The emperor, boy, there's a good one. The emperor, I have ADHD and who knows what. The emperor had taken up Christianity, and Christians were no longer being crucified. Rome was in ruins, and the Christians decided to take over, so they took over Rome, and they're still there at the Vatican. So at that time, there was a variety of Christian sects. I guess the guy you'd know, St. Paul, was the head dude of much of it early on, getting it organized. But there were various groups, and they got themselves together in a thing called the Council of Nicaea in the year 385 to create the first Bible. There were no Bibles before then. There was the Jewish, they don't call it the Bible, but the Jewish Bible, or one of them, part of it, Tanakh, what we would call the Old Testament, which is really sort of a history of the Hebrew Jewish people. So in the year 385, the Romans were pulling out of England. They were gone by around 410. So in England at that time, the Romans pulled out, and the Anglo-Saxons that had been there for the previous 1,000 years, their religions had pretty much fallen apart. You'd know them as the Druids. And in North America, the native people would not get horses for another 1,000 years. There were no horses in North or South America before 1510. Horses are not part of Native American culture. They were imported by the Spanish, deliberately it would appear. Let loose even, plus there was a lot of horses just got loose. And they thrived in North America, that's for sure. So horses were not yet in North America. In South America, the Mayan Empire, which had begun nearly 1,000 years earlier, they had moved out of hunter-gathering into being farmers, and by the time of 385, they were entering the Stone Age, and they would erect some of those pyramids, you know, as the Mayan pyramids. They're not that old. If you want old, you want the pyramids. The pyramids were 2,000 years old when Moses was around. Moses hightailed it out of Egypt around 1250 BC, after there had been a massive tsunami and explosion in the Mediterranean that wiped out the Minoans and those people, and northern Egypt was being invaded by all the people escaping the disaster of the Mediterranean. Crops had failed, and Ramses the Pharaoh couldn't pay the troops or the workers, and the early Hebrews said, "That's it, we're out of here." So that was Moses. They weren't so much slaves as laborers, really. So where was they? Back around the year 385, the Mayans were just getting off the ground, and the Aztecs were in their early days. The Aztecs would not reach the height of their Stone Age until the Spanish arrived around 1500 to exploit them and steal their gold. So the Aztecs were not yet entering the Stone Age at that time, the time of 385. Britain was being given back to the Anglo-Saxons, and in the Far East, Buddha was long dead, but in Buddhist religion, life is hell. And in Orthodox Buddhist beliefs, there are many as 16 hells, at least 8, and you might have to keep being reborn and reborn and reborn to escape them. Your goal is to escape all of this hell. That's my goal too. I hate this world. So we know that around the 15th, 16th century, the Buddhist ideas had reached Holland, and the reason we know that is in the painting The Garden of Earthly Delights by Hieronymus Bosch, we can see that he directly plagiarized Buddhist hell scrolls, people being sawn in half, and creatures with bird heads and animal heads, and those were all plagiarized directly from Buddhist hell scrolls. You can look this stuff up. You don't have to believe a single thing I say. I've looked all this stuff up, and I'm trying to tell you what I remember, and if my memory's a bit faulty, I apologize, but I'm pretty good once I know something. I'm pretty good at retaining it, in spite of my ADHD. So where was I? We're still back at the year 385. I'm trying to give you some background into what was going on in the world at that time. The Roman Empire had moved to the headquarters to Constantinople. Islam was still another 400 years away. Muhammad was not yet born. I should mention the Kaaba. The Kaaba is a cube. It's in Mecca, as was the first and second temples of the Jews, and they were all exactly the same size, approximately 50 feet by 50 feet by 50 feet. Look it up in the Bible. The Holy of Holies was 30 cubits by 30 cubits by 30 cubits. My ADHD gets me off to the side, and I thought I should make a short video, but I don't really care. Excuse me a second. Got a runny nose. That's embarrassing. Where was I? So 385. So the Christians decide to get themselves together to put a Bible together and take over Rome and get organized. And they assign St. Jerome to the task of writing a Bible in Latin. There was no other Bibles before then, except the Greek translation of the Hebrew writings, the Old Testament. We would know them as we would know it. So hell, the idea of hell was certainly around even in those days, even if it wasn't yet at the Council of Nicaea, but in the King James Version of the Bible, the word hell gets introduced into English, and a lot of that is just what happens when you try to translate one language to another. Words sometimes go astray. And so hell comes from the Aramaic Sheol. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correctly, S-H-E-O-L. There are no vowels in Aramaic. They're understood. There's only consonants. And in Hebrew, if you're learning Hebrew, you make little marks here and there so you get to know what the proper pronunciations are. But I'm sure Hebrew people, when they're writing, they don't even bother. It's like we know what the word is. It's just like you can crucify English and everybody knows what you're talking about. Anyway, I can have horrible grammar. A lot of media people these days have terrible grammar. It's very common these days. It's so common to use the phrase due to the weather, something is closed due to, and that's bad grammar. The correct would be because of, but it's just, now it's normal. It's become acceptable. See how I digress with my ADHD? So in 385, Jerome is assigned the task of translating the Bible, and he's got a Greek version easily available at the library in Alexandria if he didn't have a copy in Rome. There were no printing presses, so any kind of books had to be copied by hand, word for word, which also allowed for errors to be introduced into translations, because there were no printing presses that we know of. Well, if there were, nothing printed really survived other than not much. Things rot. So when he had to translate certain words, he ran into problems, and one problem was in the Old Testament. The Greek word hesphoros, he boo-booed on that, and he turned it into Lucifer. And if you look at the Latin Bible, see if I can get this on the screen here somewhere. This is the Latin. You can see the word Lucifer there on the left, second line down. That is, to this day, as far as I know, the Latin translation in the Roman Catholic Church of Isaiah 14:12. So Jerome introduced a proper name, Lucifer, into the Old Testament when it was nothing more than a description of a fallen Persian king, which had nothing to do with anybody. There never was a Lucifer, never going to be a Lucifer, and everybody except the Roman Catholics and the Mormons admit it. All the other religions like Baptists and Lutherans and Anglicans and you name it, even the Jehovah's Witness realized that there never was a Lucifer, and that was just bad translation, and you won't find the word Lucifer in a modern Bible other than in the Book of Mormon and in the Roman Catholic Latin Bible. The Book of Mormon the Lucifer line, Isaiah 14:12, is the line that tells you the Book of Mormon was plagiarized and therefore a complete fake, because they took the King James version of Isaiah 14:12 and translated it almost word for word into the almost the same book and phrase in the second book of Nephi. I can't remember if they do it 12:14 or 14:12, but if you look up the Book of Mormon in the second book of Nephi, you'll see they translated the King James Isaiah 14:12 almost word for word, which proves that the Book of Mormon was plagiarized. And if you study the history of the Book of Mormon, that'll tell you it's a complete 100% fake. Made up. But you knew that, didn't you? So the Book of Mormon is fake, and the Roman Catholics still hang on to the idea of Lucifer being their Bible. To the best of my knowledge, Lucifer is still in the Latin Vulgate, or whatever it's called, the Latin Bible. But everybody else removed it. So what about Satan and the devil? The word devil didn't really occur until the King James Bible, when the Latin Bible was translated into English, and devils were all very popular about that time. Islam had been around now for a few hundred years, and although they don't use the word devil, the very idea of devils is common in the Islamic world, and anyhow, the actual word devil is an English word, and it didn't really start occurring until the King James Bible in 1605. But in the Latin Bible, Jerome came across two words in the Greek writings of St. Paul and others, and in the writings of Aramaic. Well, they had the Greek Bible. So there was two words that occurred, and one was diabolos, D-I-A-B-O-L-O-S, which comes from the ancient Greek dia or dias, coming out of or as a result of, and bolos, which means the hit or the hurt. So diabolos is from the root words coming out of or as a result of the hit or the hurt. So it's somebody who has offended you or somebody you don't get along with, or it's not a proper name like John or George or truck or car. It's a description, sort of. I guess it's sort of like truck, but not like a proper name like John or George or Butch. I'm Butch. It's a description, so it would be quite proper if you don't agree with me to call me a devil or to call me Satan, which I'll get to Satan. Oh, first of all, did I cover that? In the Greek, the word was diabolos, and then Jerome didn't really know what to make of it, so he just created a brand new Latin word and changed the O to a U, and when you read the Latin Bible, it'll be diabolus, and it didn't become a devil until the King James Version. And then there's the word Satan, which is, there is no devil or Satan in the Old Testament, and there is no heaven or hell in the Old Testament. The Jewish people don't have a heaven or hell, and they don't have a Satan, and they don't have a Lucifer, and they don't have a devil. That's just all Christianity stuff. And there's my ADHD. I lost track of where I was going on with. So what do I want to get on about? I was talking about diabolos, so Satan. So Jerome came across the word in Aramaic, which would be pronounced it would sound a lot like Satan. It might have been Shaitan, like SH, but there, as in Aramaic as in Hebrew, there are no vowels, and they're read from right to left rather than left to right. So Jerome came across this word Satan, and you'll remember perhaps in the time when Jesus came across Satan and asked where he'd been, and he said he's been roaming the earth. That was just his way. It was just somebody who was questioning Jesus and saying, "You're full of crap," and Jesus was sort of saying, "Well, where are you coming from?" And his reply was, "Well, I've been around. I've roamed the earth. I know what's going on. You're full of crap." So Satan was somebody who totally did not agree with Jesus. But anyhow, the word Satan, Jerome didn't know what to make of it, and so he turned it into a proper name. Well, I don't think he capitalized it, but in the, I know I gotta go look it up, and I'm not going to do that. But in the Latin Bible, there is the word Satan, and when the King James people came across it, they just made it. They just capitalized it, and now you got yourself a Satan, but there never was an individual Satan. There is no Satan in the Old Testament. There is no devil in the Old Testament. There's this talk of a serpent, but you have to start accepting that a lot of those Old Testament stories are allegorical, because if you really read Genesis and the first books, and I have, you'll see that there was all kinds of humans running around before Adam. If you read Genesis very carefully, God created humans before he created or she created Adam. And there were sons of God in Genesis too. So long before Jesus, there were sons of God, and they found the humans quite attractive and took great pleasure in bonking them. But for some reason, they decided to create this Adam being, and Adam appears not to have been sentient. He did not have self-awareness. He was still an animal. And he was kept in a special place, and to give him a sex life, he was given a mate who was created out of him, apparently, through DNA growth or something. And Adam and Eve apparently got hold of some sort of fruit, which turned, this is allegorical, they came across some kind of knowledge that allowed them to become self-aware. Self-awareness is if you can recognize yourself in a mirror. Most animals will not recognize themselves in a mirror. It's an intelligence test. And most humans of sound mind will very quickly know, well, that's me. But animals, they don't do that. And if there are some, I'm not up on that. I'm not a psychologist, I'm a physicist. So, where were I? This is getting long. I'm up to 20 minutes, and if you're still with me, you must have nothing better to do, but you really want to know about this stuff. And I was going to make it short, but I didn't. I just go on and on and on, trying to be entertaining. So the whole point of all this is to try and give you an idea that Satan, Lucifer, and Diabolos, which became the devil, were all created by Jerome. They did not exist before the Bible was translated into Latin. They just did not exist ever. If I haven't gotten that into your head, well, I tried. And because I'm not going to go on forever and ever and yak on and on and on, I think I sort of covered the main things. I know there's something in the back of my head that's nagging me that I wanted to tell you about, and it's I'll remember it just as soon as I stop recording, of course. People don't like hearing what they don't want to hear. Aristotle, who lived nearly 500 years before Jesus, 400 years before Jesus, he's one of the most famous older Greeks in history. He was ordered to kill himself by his fellow citizens. They hated him so much. So, the humans, they don't like hearing what they don't want to hear. And a lot of theories are bad theories just because they were made up, like Big Bang. That's such a silly theory. See, I'm drifting off on one of my ADHD trips. There's a word for that, and of course that's escaping me too because I want to stop talking here. Observational bias. Everybody has observational bias. You want to see things the way you want them to be, and observational bias leads to innumerable problems like the idiot idea of Big Bang Theory. I'm a physicist. I think that is such an idiot idea that anybody who espouses it should be ashamed of themselves. You read something and you haven't a clue what you're talking about. You're just repeating what somebody told you, just like the religious types believe there's a God. And that's what I was going to get back to. One of the things is I'm an atheist. I hate religion. I consider religion to be the epitome of evil. Creators have no right to create sentient beings and rule them forever. That's just evil and cruel and outrageously idiotic. So the whole point of this rant, and I hope I got it across, was to try and get you to read your Bible if you're interested in this kind of stuff. I know if you have a religion, you didn't read your Bible. I know it. Or you just read the cherry-picked phrases, and because of your observational bias, you chose to take the meaning that you wanted to take out of it rather than looking for actual meaning. Life is a horrible thing, this is a living hell. Humans are terrible creatures. I'm a recluse because I can't stand this planet. I can't stand the humans, and I just keep to myself, and I don't care if you love me, I don't care if you hate me, I'll be dead soon, so I'm just trying to be useful while I'm still here, and I'll be glad to be dead. Since there isn't anything else after this, I'm just trying to be useful and improve this planet. And you can take it or leave it. I don't care. Now I'm up to 24 minutes. Did I make my point? Probably not. Part of this test was I got a bit of new sound equipment last January, and I just haven't really got around to working on understanding it and make it work with my webcam. And then even after it seems okay on my little tablet down here, my little broken down transformer with a cracked screen, it doesn't always upload the way I think it's going to upload to YouTube. So you're part of a big test for my sound. So if you think the sound is okay, you could leave a comment and say the sound was okay. If you think the sound was crappy, tell me the sound was crappy, and I'll try and figure out this mixer in a way that it makes my webcam happy, or maybe I'll get rich and buy a really good camera. But it's bye-bye from Butch.